What's going on, people? We are back in the house and we are back for a show that, let's be honest, a lot of us have been looking forward to, including myself and these three. Let's get underway, shall we? Welcome back to the channel. This is the first of our Monday 9 o'clock slots for the same old Gooners. You'll recognise a lot of these people from a podcast that we used to do. And we are now over on Lead Judges TV. We thought we'd bring the boys back. Lead Judges is with me. Welcome to the house, Harry Simew. How are you, my friend?
All good, man. Can't complain. Happy after yesterday, and looking forward to being back chatting with you guys. It's been way too long, man. I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, so am I, man. Absolutely. Graham, what are you saying, Graham Brooks? It's been way too long, man. And it's like, listen, I see Lee a lot and I see Harry every so often, but I don't get to talk to you so much anymore, Graham. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to you weekly, mate. Welcome back to the show.
It's great to be back, and great to be back with you three guys. You know, I think the last show we did together was when we won a cup final, when we beat Chelsea 3 years ago. So it's great to be back after winning the Community Shield yesterday. And, you know, whenever I go out and about, I'm always recognised for the Tactical Insight show that I do off AFTV with James. But people always say to me, do you know what? I really miss you on that old show you used to do with Judges, Dan Potts, and that guy who looks like Alexander Mitrovic of Fulham. So it's really great to be back. And I know that, you know, I was down a pub recently, I had a meal out with my wife, and this guy comes up to me in the bar. He goes, "Oh, Brooksy," he said, when are you going to get back? When are you and Dan going to get that show back together? I bloody miss it so much, you know. And he said, I don't know if you know this, he says, but Judges has been disrespecting your Tactical Insight show. Apparently he falls asleep while he watches it. He's probably a bit groggy after a few pints. And then he goes, mind you, he only drinks half, doesn't he? So, you know, and listen, judges, mate, just one final thing from me. James phoned me up when you guys got back from America, and he goes, you know what, Graham? He said, Edu watches the show and he stays awake all through it. So, so yeah, it's
he
great
doesn't
to be
know.
back.
I can confirm that. Like, he had a go at me for dissing it.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm really looking forward to this tonight, guys. Great to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, we had to get back together, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
You know what? I've been looking forward to it for a while, Lee. I can't lie.
Yeah, I have. And like, it's good to have the boys back. And don't forget, we've got Mark, you know, and his cheese and biscuits. He's on the old standby list. He's on the bench. He's stretching and warming up. We bought him a tracksuit. Good guy as he is. As it is, but listen, the thing with the Tactical Insight show is just a bit of banter, a bit of fun, like, you know.
I know, I know.
And I get people coming up to me like, please keep dissing it, and all that. But it is a good show. I actually did watch it the other day, and because like Edu now has, you know, he sanctioned it, and he, like, you know, so so very, very good. So look, listen, I love Graham, very, very insightful and all that. Like, but we said we're going to get the boys back. We've been trying to do it for a little while. But listen, we asked Craig as well. I have been in contact with Craig to see if he would come in here as well, like, you know. And unfortunately, like, he's not ready to do this sort of stuff no more at the moment. He said he's not part of it. But listen, there's always a spot for him if he wants to get involved as well. So yeah, so we're back. The boys are back. I've really missed this show. I always had an affection for it when people would come up to me and go like, you know, I want to see you do the same old Arsenal again, like, you know, and it's a shame that that's not going no more and things like that. There was always a big plus on my thing when people would recognise what we'd done. So we've been talking about it over the summer, haven't we? And we decided that we'd give it a go, and the boys are back, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Big up KC, Mr. Kevin Campbell in the chat as well. Says good to see you all back together, guys. Gotta love Kev. And I did watch the back end of the hybrid squad earlier, and he was on top form with you, Lee, I've got to say, and Sophie as well. So make sure you go check that one out as well. Make sure you're doing us all a favor. Make sure you go like this video and also subscribe to the channel. The next target for us is 40k. Make sure you do the same with Harry Simew on Chronicles of a Gooner, and of course go and follow Graham Brooks as well on all social medias, and you'll see him, if you haven't realized already, on the Tactical Insight show not the tactical insight show that Lee calls it. It's a great one. I absolutely love it, man. It's one of my favourites on AFTV by far. Harry, let's start with you. Seeing as me and Lee had a bit of a chat yesterday. Charity Shield, it's a plate, it's a shield, it's a trophy, it's a start. Not an amazing amount to analyse, in my opinion, really. Two very evenly matched sides, which I think is a positive. And a penalty shootout yet again. It seems like we seem to be taking them every week at this stage. But always good to get one over on Manchester City. What could you take from yesterday, H?
Yeah, as you say, great to get one over Manchester City. I think it's a victory that we needed psychologically. I was a little bit worried actually going into this game because I felt like it was one of those that we didn't stand a lot to gain from, but we could have lost quite a lot from if we got beaten and beaten convincingly. And during pre-season, I have to say, the team looked imbalanced to me. You know, this idea of playing Havertz in midfield, you know, at times I'm sure that'll work in the league against certain opposition and in certain game states, but generally speaking, it's not the go-to for me. So I was worried about that. I was a little bit worried about the left back position. You know, we'd seen Tomiyasu, Tierney, Timber all have a go there over pre-season. And, you know, I wasn't really sure what the plan was for that area of the pitch. Obviously, then we got the news about Gabriel Jesus as well and his injury, which deflated things a little bit further. And I thought that if we went into the Community Shield and we got beaten convincingly, that it would be a psychological blow, given that Manchester City, really, when we've played them in recent years, we haven't been able to lay a glove on them. You know, we gave them the game basically at the Emirates Stadium during a disappointing run for ourselves with Tomiyasu made that mistake, and we put ourselves on the back foot from that. We went up to the Etihad when it really, really mattered, and we were blown away. It was men against boys that night. So I was a little bit concerned, but as you say, we competed. We competed really, really well. We kept our defensive shape. We were really, really organized. One of the big positives for me, though, above everything else, was seeing that or seeing further evidence that Mikel Arteta as a manager, I think, is developing. So when we started the game, and I'm sure Graham will have a bit to say on this as well, being our tactics man, but when we started the game, Kai Havertz was literally playing as the number 9, right? He was trying to close people down. He was the target when we were trying to move the ball up the field quickly. But we couldn't get on the ball. You know, for 10, 15 minutes, we couldn't get on the ball. It was literally City stroking the ball left to right. And we were struggling a little bit. And what I noticed was Kai Havertz at a point dropped a little bit deeper, almost into the midfield, playing a false 9 role rather than a 9 role. And then you saw Declan Rice drop that a little bit deeper alongside Thomas Partey so that we could re-establish some control in the middle of the park. And that was a tweak that Mikel made, having watched the first 10, 15 minutes of that game and realizing that things weren't going well. So not only are the young players getting better, not only are the new boys starting to settle in, but I think we're seeing a manager develop as well. And for all the talk over the last few years about the team being young and still developing and still growing, it's often been overlooked, the fact that Mikel Arteta is still growing as a manager as well. And we almost expect him to do everything right all of the time. Well, he's not perfect yet, but there are signs that he's getting better as well. So that was my big takeaway from the game. And add to that the spirit and the sort of togetherness that we've seen develop in this group over the last year, 18 months, you know, for them to keep fighting to get the equalizer and then have the momentum and ultimately the stones. I know that's ironic given our opponents yesterday, but to go into the penalty shootout and win it, for me was brilliant. So really good. And as for the celebration, police, get in the bin, because if you don't enjoy going to the football with your friends and family and you're not going to enjoy a victory, then what the bloody hell is the point? So, you know, it was a great day. We're not sitting here saying it's a major trophy and that's it. Our work's done this season. We enjoyed yesterday. Now we move on and we go into the season, but positive signs overall.
Listen, I think you made some great points there, Harry. I know Graham will probably break them down tactically as well. Going to come to you next, Graham. Listen, I'll be really interested to know your thoughts on the tactics of Mikel Arteta and how we got across the line yesterday. But for me, Graham, more importantly, our 3 new signings all got the nod. Havertz, Rice and Timber. Particularly impressed with Timber personally, which I'll come into in a bit. But your thoughts on those 3, Graham, as we lined up?
Yeah, I thought they all excellent on the day, had a great impact on the game. I was particularly pleased with Kai Havertz because this is how I expected him to play in the Arsenal team in this position, not in that left-sided number 8 role. So to see him at number 9, and as Harry says, he added a real focal point to our play. And as Harry said, he did drop deep. The thing I liked about this game, though, was I thought that we showed we could compete against Man City. This was a really good football game, Dan. A real good football game as a curtain raiser to the new season. And to see us sort of like have such belief for the whole game was, I think, good to see. I think tactically, Mikel learnt from the defeat at the Etihad, and how he learnt, I think, was in that start of the game, actually, what Harry talked about when Manchester City was stroking the ball around. Because when we went to the Etihad last season, we committed to an all-out press against City, and they literally chipped the ball over our press to Haaland and then had runners off Haaland and took us apart. So what happened yesterday, I thought what we saw was Havertz and Odegaard pressing their centre-halves, and Rice, if he needed to, push up on Rodri to block that passing lane. And I think the team sat off, not totally committing to the press. So when Man City had the ball, they could have the ball, and if they beat that first part of the press, we weren't going to fully engage in our press. So I thought tactically we were better yesterday, the way we deployed the press. And I think the ploy from the manager really was, once he saw how Man City were playing, was to stay in the game for the first 20 minutes, which we did, and then was to grow into the game, which we did. And I thought what pleased me yesterday was we played the game against Man City the way they like to play the game against us. We sort of like kept hold of the ball. I thought that Rice had a real pivotal role in this game. We talked about Declan Rice. He was available in the 2 for Thomas Partey, so they couldn't play through us, through the middle. I thought also he dropped back between the 2 centre-backs when White went high, as we saw for that chance he fashioned for Havertz. And he made one brilliant recovery tackle in that game, which showed what he's good at all about in his recoveries. And I think that we were really composed on the ball. We were passing it. We weren't rushing our passes. We were building it up. It was controlled football. We had tremendous belief, and we went toe-to-toe with Man City. And if you'd said to me yesterday, one of those teams had won 3 trophies last year and one had come second in the league, I thought, although Man City I still think are ahead of us, I think that, if you didn't know which team had won, you might be thinking, do you know what? I'm struggling to see here which is the better team, because I thought that we stayed in the game really well, and then we started playing our football towards the end of the first half, and then we created 2 big chances. I think which Havertz unfortunately couldn't take, but still we created the big chances. And I think Havertz was, as Harry said, key in this game, because he started in that first 20 minutes coming deeper, getting his foot in, showed his physicality. All right, he made a couple of fouls, but he showed his intent to get involved. He was able to sort of like, when we went to him, he was holding the ball up, bringing Martinelli into the play. And we got better as that first half went on through Havertz, I thought, sort of like coming into the game. I thought Timber was excellent on the left-hand side. He was strong in the duels. He came forward and supported Martinelli on the left-hand side, looks a real player there. And I think Rice grew into the game as well next to Partey. Partey sometimes is isolated in that number 6 role. Partey had Rice for support. Rice, I thought, sometimes drifted out wide, but then he got back in with Partey at times. And also he supported the defence when White went high. I thought he had a really good game. Second half, I think City got a very good goal. And unfortunately, we just made that change. Kieran Tierney come on. Partey got turned in midfield by Foden, who was fresh legs. And they scored a really good goal from Palmer. But then we kept our belief, and, we got the equaliser. It was a bit lucky, but if you don't buy a ticket, you don't win the lottery. Trossard took the shot and it went in. I thought that in the end, we deserved an equaliser, and then we won it on penalties. And I was so pleased for Fabio Vieira to get that last penalty. Vieira winning a final, just like a Vieira did back in 2005, was a great way to end the day. So, yeah, great positives from the day. And I think psychologically, final point for me is that we competed with Man City. Even had we lost that game to Man City, I would have taken positives out of that. But I think the team have shown now they can compete with Man City, and they got that hoodoo off their back. They've finally beaten Man City in a game, and that'd be great going into the new season, Dan.
Yeah, Lee, it's interesting what Graham says there, because we did match them, I thought. And if we would have lost at 1-0, it would have been disappointing. But I also didn't feel that we'd got battered by them. And I think that they did. They embarrassed us at the Etihad not long ago, Lee, if I'm honest with you. And even at the Emirates, through individual errors, comfortably won the game in the end. And I think what was impressive for me was the fact that we did look like we matched them. I want to mention a couple of players in particular. One I'm going to throw a spanner in the works with. The other one I'm going to mention is obviously Jurrien Timber. Now, for me, everybody's been talking about why Tierney doesn't fit in this side. Everyone's been talking why Zinchenko's great, but he can't do much defending. I think we've just found someone who can do everything, mate, because he showed Zinchenko how to defend and he showed Kieran Tierney how to play in the system. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. I really was impressed, considering this guy's apparently a right back or right centre back. He's gone over at left back twice now, and he's been one of the best players on the pitch. Apparently, the guy can play in holding midfield as well. I was really excited by this signing. I remember being on Forever Arsenal on AFTV with you and Jordan and Turkish, and I was saying, I fancy this signing so much. I really like what I see. I don't watch Dutch football, so I'm not naive enough to think that, I know everything about this kid. But I've been very, very surprised. And I have to say, Lee, last season it was Saliba and Jesus in pre-season that really impressed me, and obviously Zinchenko. This season, so far, he is head and shoulders the one that's impressed me in terms of the new players that have come in.
Yeah.
I've been really, really impressed. But I have to throw a spanner in the works, as I always do. Maybe Harry and Graham will disagree with this. I didn't look at Havertz and go, wow, but I must have been looking at a different game, because I didn't look at him and go, cool, that's what we need. That is what we need up top. I looked and I thought, a little bit frustrated. Some of the way he walks around the pitch, his body language got to change for me, because it don't come across well at all. Someone's phone's going off. It's got to be Graham. And I don't know. I don't look at Havertz and go, shocking, shambles. What the hell is he doing? But I looked at it and thought it was pretty mediocre and an okay performance. But when I was coming away, everybody else was saying how fantastic and vital and pivotal he was. I saw him miss a couple of chances. One, I don't think he really should have scored. Maybe he could have done a bit better. The other one completely fluffed it. If that is a top quality striker, they score. I'm sorry, they do. And I think that is what we're missing still. And I think that could come back to haunt us. So a couple of players there, Lee. But listen, I'm up for a debate. If you think that Havertz was top class, then go for it. But it wasn't for me. It was all right for me. Average, I'd say.
Let's first of all talk about Timber. I've been with you on this, equally surprised how good he is. Really, really good. Left back, right back. I think now that really does do a lot for us going forward, because he can play in the right back position and do that if we need to go down that side or the left. I think that, probably chose to go down the left, no Zinchenko at the moment. And I think Ben White is still very, very good at right back. So we still got that little bit of guile with him on the left hand side. I don't think he piled into midfield too much yesterday, but when he did, he was good. I love the way he defends. I think all of a sudden now we've got good defenders in all areas of the park from the back four. Ben White made a very, very good header in the first couple of minutes and went on from there. I thought it was every game he's been very, very impressive. I thought Havertz played well. I'm going to say that now. I thought he brought in hold up play and everything there, and give us some dangerous moments. I think that we was under the cosh on a few occasions there, and what happened was we got the ball up to him, and he was the platform, like the springboarders to get forward a little bit, when you've got a player like him in there, you've got to have that. And let's get this right. When people go, oh, yeah, it's a great thing. He's up against great defenders. This is the team that's just come off the back of winning the Champions League and the Premier League and the FA Cup. They're very, very good defensively. So you're not going to run amok there. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day. Now, did he have a better performance than Haaland in that game? I think he did. I think he was more influential than Haaland, and everybody, knows what Haaland is. Why didn't Haaland have a great game? Because he came up against someone who's good in defence. I think that, you've got to take that into consideration with the opposition. But I felt that for the first 10, 15 minutes of the game, I thought City were in control. It was very, very listening to what Graham said there and Harry, where we dropped back and made little decisions there. But I also think one of the reasons we then got our foot into the game was because he come into the play, held up, made a few challenges, won the ball in the air, set up a few moves. And yeah, if he takes those chances, the first one I thought was a little difficult, but he still made the goalkeeper save, and he made the goalkeeper save the second one. I think the second one, Well, it was it Saka that cut it back? I think
Yeah,
he should score that, like. But what I listen to and all that. If Jesus misses that chance, there's a more forgiving like in the fan base. But because Havertz does it, or even there, shall I say, Eddie misses that sort of chance, there's a little bit more. I'll have a go at them, sort of thing. Like, you know, I think that for me, I thought he'd done. I don't say he was like where I've been blown away by his performance on whatever, but I quite enjoyed it. I'm going to say in Barcelona, I quite enjoyed his performance in LA. I thought he was very, very good in that 8. I thought he was influential, and I do get what you're saying there about his body language. But I thought I watched a little bit of it back today. Like, you know, his work rate is you know, went under the radar a little bit yesterday. Like, you know, he was bashing into a few of them and everything like that. I don't think I hear what you're saying. That I don't think you can go, "Oh, it was a unbelievable performance from him." But I felt it was a decent start from him against the top side. You know, you ain't going to get many chances against teams like that. So I get that you got to take them. But I thought that he done okay. I thought like he was one of the reasons that we kept in the game. And the biggest thing for me, and I said this to you, Dan, coming out when it, like, you know, I turned around to my mate. I said, I'm fed up with playing well against this side, and losing, like, well, you lost, well, you didn't do this and all that, like, you know. Now listen, the last time they played us off the park, but we didn't have our best team out, like, you know. We was near enough at our best team out, as they did as well. They made a couple of changes, you know. When De Bruyne come on, I thought they were a little bit better, but don't forget we got players missing as well. I want to take on Man City whenever it is, twice this season in the league with our best team. And with our best team, I think we'll compete with them. And I don't think there's going to be a lot in it. I thought we done really, really well yesterday to really go toe-to-toe with them. I thought it was a fantastic tactical game of football. But I think it was so important that we won. I know we didn't win the game, that we come out, got that equaliser and then went on one in penalty. I think it was more important for Arsenal Football Club and us fans that we got that result than them, you know, because of for obvious reasons. And I enjoyed it. And I'm with Harry on this, like, you know what I mean? Chris Sutton saying, like, you know what I mean, it was celebrated. I don't see him saying anything about Pep when they scored, like, you know, going mad about it and all that. Like, listen, we're going to have to get used to these salty people and salty fans. The Arsenal are back. They don't like it. They don't like it.
Can I just add a couple of points quickly on Havertz? Just quickly on Havertz, a couple of things. So, with regards to his body language, right, he's just one of those players, and people have to just accept that, and that cannot, in my opinion, be highlighted every single week, because it will be. Every time he doesn't perform, that's going to be the first thing that people say. We've seen many talented footballers over the years have similar body language. We live in an age where we're drowned in stats. Yeah, all the stats tell you that Kai Havertz works his arse off. So if he's going to look a little bit languid and a little bit sort of lackadaisical at times, we've just got to accept that that's a bit of an illusion. So, like, I would say, don't read into that too much. The other thing is the recruitment we've done, the big recruitment that we've done over the last sort of few years has been really, really positive. And I think we're now in a position as a fan base where when we get a new player in like Kai Havertz, even if the opinion is divided on him, which I understand why it is with this particular player because of his time at Chelsea, I think as fans, as supporters, our job is to welcome him in with open arms, give him the support. And if we do that, then they stand a greater chance of succeeding. I don't want to spend the first 6-8 weeks of the season micro-analyzing every single thing that Kai Havertz does. I agree that he wasn't spectacular yesterday, but I thought he was effective. And you can be effective without being spectacular. And like, that's just my thing on it. Like, I feel like Lee's absolutely spot on when he said, if Jesus missed that chance, it's not a big deal. Jesus missed a ton of chances last season, brings loads to the team, and I absolutely adore him, but he misses chances as well. We don't have that clinical goal-scoring striker. We don't have that. What Mikel Arteta prioritizes is players that bring the link up and give more to the team all around. Now, people might think that's the wrong approach, and that's fine. But for me, if we're going to micro-analyze every little bit of Kai Havertz's game to the point where we're nitpicking, then I don't see what chance he has of succeeding at this football club. And we shouldn't be a football club where people think twice about coming to in case they're going to get hammered from the beginning. And I just want him to hit the ground running, because I want all of this stuff to stop, basically. And I'm not saying you, Dan, because you didn't. It's not like you stuck the boot in on him, but I think there are people that are waiting to do that, like literally waiting to do that.
Yeah, you're right. There are 100%. What I on the same kind of markers that Harry, I do get a lot of people that go way over the top with it as well. So you get both sides of it. You get, wow, this guy could be a Van Persie, and you get, oh, this guy looks hopeless. I don't know that there's many that have a middle ground, and I feel that is where I was with Havertz yesterday. I thought, yeah, he was all right. I didn't look and go, wow, but I didn't look and say, how's he still on? Get him off. And I think that was where I was. When I walked away, a lot of people were saying, I think we found our new number 9. And I was thinking, have we? I don't think we're going to win the league with him up front. That's all I think. But I could be wrong, man. He could be absolutely what we need. I think Jesus brings a lot more from what I've seen. But Kai Havertz, at the same time, has played one game up top for us. So we've got to give him a chance. And I agree with you. We've got to look at him over a period as opposed to over a period of games, which I will say, actually, if you were judging him on the first, 5 games, I actually think he's been all right. I don't actually think he's been shambles at all. I think he was good in pre-season, and when I saw him play, particularly against Barcelona, scored a good goal against MLS All-Stars as well. So I'm going to judge him over a longer period of time, of course. I just got a bit surprised by some of the fans that were waxing lyrical about him. I didn't really see that personally. I thought he was good. He had an all right game and was good with his link-up, and I thought he deserved credit for that. Would have liked to see him slot it home, of course. But if we were thinking of positive players, Graham, I think you're back with us. Hopefully you can hear us. I want to touch on Saliba, because I thought the kid was absolutely incredible yesterday. I mean, we're talking about an unbelievable centre-half here. And at 22 years old, I think he is now, I really ain't seen one better than him at that age. I just think he's unbelievable. And big up Gabriel yesterday as well, because he never gets a lot of credit. It's always Saliba talk, and I understand why. And yesterday he had Haaland in his pocket. Defensively as a unit, Graham, there's been some problems, particularly at the Emirates. But you can't deny that the talent is there now. When we're used to the Mustafis and the Socrates and the David Luizes of those kind of years, we're now looking at a couple of centre-halves that just complement each other. And I thought they were pretty much faultless yesterday in most of what they did, Graham.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Go on, mate.
Yeah, apologies for that. Got frozen out. I thought he was immense yesterday, Saliba. I thought that Haaland had an XG of 0 in the game, so while he was on the pitch. And I thought that he played against him really well, the way he sort of managed him out into areas. I think he's an outstanding talent, one of the best in Europe. And as you say, I've never seen, like you, Dan, I've never seen a defender that good at that age. And we've got him now. We've secured him on a new contract, which is fabulous, which is great for the club. One thing I noticed yesterday, I don't know if Dan noticed it, if Harry noticed it, was the size of the Arsenal team coming into that game. Because, we've got sort of like tall players now, physical players on the pitch, tall players. And I really like that back line, of White, Saliba, Gabriel and Timber. They are proper defenders. I remember Pep saying last year that he wants defenders who can win their duels and who are very good on recovery. And we've got defenders now who are really good on recovery, really good in the duels. And so when the team are at home playing against a team where we want to shift into a 2-3-5 or 5 lanes of attack, you can trust those defenders if the team play over the top on recoveries. They're very comfortable on the ball. Saliba, I think yesterday, played one absolutely superb pass, which I think was out to Benjamin White. And he put that cross in that Lee talked about that was slightly behind Havertz. So he had to swivel to get his shot away. So he's very comfortable with his passing. He's very assured. He eats up the ground. He's very good in the duels. He's good in the air. He was just really good yesterday. It was a tough call between him and Timber for man of the match for me. They gave it to Timber, but I thought it was Saliba. I thought Saliba took care of Haaland, and I just think he looks the complete deal now. And it's no secret to me that when we lost him last season, we didn't look so assured at the back. Okay, we started to leak a few goals after the World Cup with him in the team, but I just think that overall when he's in the defence, I just think the defence looks more secure. And that partnership is what you said, Dan. The partnership between Gabriel and Saliba is such a good partnership. And of course, that was broken at the end of last year. He had a fantastic game yesterday. He's a fantastic footballer, a bright talent. I'm so pleased he's an Arsenal player.
Yeah, and just sticking with you on that, Graham, I think it's a really interesting point there. We've looked before at the strength in depth, and I think now defensively, there ain't no excuses anymore for me because Rob Holding, I think, will be sold. We've got Zinchenko, Tierney, Tomiyasu, Kivior, and now Timber that have all had a go at left back in pre-season and at the back end of last season. We've got Timber, Ben White, and Tomiyasu that can play at that right back. And now at centre backs, we've got Ben White and Tomiyasu, to be fair, that can play there, and Timber, from what we hear. And at the left side, we've got Gabriel and Kivior. I feel like that's what we need throughout the rest of this squad, Graham, because that really is strength in depth and versatility there, isn't it?
He's got tremendous strength and depth now right through the squad. He's got sort of like cover in all the defensive areas, cover in defensive midfield. He's got cover in the wide areas, and he's got cover up front. I think the only thing we lack in this team, and you were talking about it there when I was frozen out, so I missed, unfortunately, what you said. I don't think we've got a natural finisher in this team. And I think that's the one drawback I think we've got. We haven't got a centre forward who's a natural finisher. I mean, Gabriel Jesus, for all the brilliance he gives the team, the way he floats around the front, and he had an outstanding pre-season, by the way. I was gutted when he got injured. He looked back really sharp to as he did at the start of last season in pre-season. But he's not a natural finisher. If you look at, the point, I don't know if you guys saw it at the back end of last season, the three forwards who had the lowest conversion rate for expected goals from shots at goal were, funny enough, Calvert-Lewin, Havertz and Jesus, who had the lowest strike rate from expected goals from shots. And Kane and Haaland are obviously the highest. So we haven't got a natural finisher. But coming back to your main point, we have got, Dan, as you say, he's got real strength in depth now. 9 of his, which I think is his best 11, are his signings. The only 2 that are not are Saka and Martinelli. And Saka came through the academy, and Martinelli obviously was a signing before he got there, but he's a fine player. He's got a great first 11. You guys were at the game yesterday. I came home from work to watch it. But when I saw that team come up, it looked great on, when I looked at it on my phone, I thought, wow, it looked just a great team. The only thing I think we lack is a natural finisher. But you are right. He's got cover now in all those areas. Vieira and Smith-Rowe can come in and play roles. He's got Trossard, who was pushing for a start yesterday. He's got cover in defence. He's got the squad, as Dan says. I think he's got no excuses now where this team shouldn't sort of like kick on. And I do agree with what Harry said at the start. I think he's improving as a manager as well. I think Harry was spot on the way he analysed that at the start. He adapted in that game yesterday really well. And I think he does adapt in games, Arteta. And I think even Declan Rice has said, we listen to the manager. We carry his instructions onto the pitch. He tells us, we go to him all the time. So there's tremendous trust in Arteta in that group, a tremendous team spirit. And I think that, there's a great togetherness now in the squad, and that comes with what the manager's done with the squad.
Do you know what as well? Just a quick point on the squad, right? We were without Jesus and Zinchenko, 2 of our most important players last season. Dan referenced how impactful they were right from the beginning when they arrived. We didn't even speak about them yesterday once because we now have the ability to cover those positions. And that is the biggest indicator of the fact that the squad on the whole is looking much healthier. I thought Smith-Rowe, when he came on, looked really sharp. I thought Fabio Vieira looked really sharp and caused City a slightly different problem. I thought Leandro Trossard gave us something different. The only area where I think we're still a little bit light, like we're 1 or 2 injuries away from being a bit light, is still in the center of that midfield. I still worry, especially if you're going to play Partey and Rice. If you lose one of them, okay, you've got Jorginho. There's rumours linking him with a move away before the window's up. I hope that doesn't happen. But I still think we need one more high-quality midfield player because he will say that Smith-Rowe can do it and that Havertz can drop back. But the balance would be a little bit off for me in that instance. So I think that's the one area that I look at and think if there is a bit of money there or we do generate a bit from the sales over the coming weeks, go and do it. And that's why I'm a bit surprised, actually, that we're moving for David Raya, who's a great goalkeeper in his own right. But it's that centre midfield I'm a little bit concerned about.
Yeah, Harry, you make great points there. And before we come into some more predictions for what our season looks like ahead, Lee, I wanted to touch on this because window's still open. David Raya looks like it could be happening. Matt Turner's gone to Nottingham Forest, it seems today, for around 10 million. So it looks like David Raya will happen. I'm with Harry. I think central midfield and up top, we're 2 players short still, and that's with David Raya. I think personally, if we was to go and get a Caicedo and an Ivan Toney, I think we are looking right up there for no more excuses about winning something for me. I know Tony don't come till January, I understand that. But for me, if you can get by with Trossard and Jesus until January, then you start hitting the FA Cup, which starts in the new year. You're in the Champions League. We open the last 16 within February, March time. And we might even hopefully be in a domestic cup if we go for Carabao Cups as well. This is what we want. We want to be in all 4 competitions for as long as possible. Imagine that. And then Ivan Toney comes in as well on top of what you got. That for me is a serious squad. So I'm with Harry. I think Declan Rice and Partey, without them, we're back to Jorginho and El Neni. So I think we're pretty light in there. Whether or not people believe Smith Rowe and Havertz can play in that role or Vieira, I don't think we've seen it for long enough to just that's a bit of a risk, but maybe it'll work. I like what I see from Smith Rowe. I think he looks sharp this pre-season. Like I say, we've mentioned Havertz, Fabio Vieira. It's not for me, but I don't want to go into that big debate because I think we've all gone there and been that. I think he'll get this year to prove the people wrong, like myself that aren't sure. But I do think we're kind of short there, Lee. I wanted to ask you that, but also wanted to ask you about Trossard quickly as well, because I was surprised he didn't get the nod. I think he's been our best player in pre-season. And when he came on, he just made something happen, mate. And that was the goal that got us through to the penalties, which won us the game. So I think he deserves a lot more game time. And I expected him to be playing in the 9, not Havertz. So I wanted to get your opinions on a couple of those points there, bro.
That's a great point. I actually thought it would be. I never actually thought that Havertz would play that role, but I think that the way we played it, it needed to be just someone with a little bit more strength, a little bit more height. I don't know, power. That he went down that route, and when you look at it, you can't really criticise a manager for doing that because he got the result via on penalties. Does it really matter? You still beat them. That's what matters. I think Trossard will get his games. I thought, you have to have a look at that game yesterday. I felt that Martinelli worked his socks off, run himself into the ground, and in the last 20 minutes, you've got Trossard coming on. You think like someone like Kyle Walker, who I thought, had his work cut out a bit with. He don't look so comfortable playing against Martinelli as he does other players. I can tell you that now. Like a couple of times, Martinelli got past him again. But when he gets a little bit tired, along comes Trossard. And I thought Trossard, links up really, really well in there again. I thought he was excellent when he come on. So it's not always about players that are starting are going to be key. You know what I mean? You can be a key player, but being on the bench and winning games from the bench. And I think we got that now. I was talking to my mate earlier on and he come up with a fantastic point, and I can't take the credit for it, when he turned around and said to me today, we haven't got no fillers on the bench no more. Every player is like on the bench yesterday. They had a couple of fillers on there. They only got a couple of young guys and all that. Like I don't know too much about them. But last season, the season before, I've seen a few young kids on the bench making up the numbers. I didn't see that yesterday. As Harry said earlier on, there was still no Shinchenko in there. There was still no Jesus, no El Neni. There's
no Jorginho.
No Jorginho.
Yesterday.
Apparently, was he injured or something? I think he's a slight little knock or something from the way before. So you look at that and you think, wow, that squad is very, very strong now. I think that there'll still be a little bit more tinkering towards the end of the season. I think that a couple of them will probably go. I think Sammy Conga will go to Burnley. I think that's going to happen. I think maybe another couple, and then I think that there may be room for another one coming in, whether it be a midfield player. I don't know. That's the key for me now. What happens in the next future. I get what you're saying, Dan, about a top striker. When you just mentioned Tony, I'd love us to go for him in January. I'd actually go for him now and say, sod it, bite the bullet now. I know we can't get him to January, but I'll try and get him now. But there's this thing about the moment we can't even train, which is ridiculous. If they could get that sort of ban off him,
September he can train.
So is it in September he can train, right? Okay. So I would actually bite the bullet and go for it then, but funds maybe that you can't. I don't know, I think at this moment in time, Arsenal over the next 2 weeks will be shedding some of the players from this squad, and then I think we'll assess it to the end of it. But I know what we're saying with this, Ray. If you're prepared to spend 30, I think it's going to be about 30 million in it for him.
Yeah.
Right. You must have money if you feel you can spend 30 million on a backup goalkeeper or number one. I'm not saying, you know what I mean, but in a position that we don't really need to fill. I know we've just lost Turner, but we could go and buy a number two goalkeeper or whatever, like, you know. But to spend that sort of money, there must be money there if something else comes down. I like what Edu and I like what Arteta say. If a player becomes available, we have got the funds to do it. So I'm liking that. So I think which has been very, very good over the last few weeks. What I've noticed is that the squad now is a lot stronger than what it was, and they've done that pretty quick as well. Like, you know, so I'm interested to see what route they go down with the striker. I think Balogun is definitely going. There's no two ways about that. What are they going to do? Are they going to replace that, or where's that money going to go? Like, you know, so but I can't see. You know, Balogun's not even in the squads at the moment, so I think that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, Harry. Just quickly before we do move, David Raya and two more, in my opinion, in terms of a central midfielder and a centre forward. But Lee makes some good points there. There needs to be some outgoings. We haven't really sold many at all, have we? And there looks to be a lot of players that we need to find a club for, whether that be on loan or permanently. Do you expect that to be kind of the next few weeks? We start to see a lot of players shift out now.
Yeah, I think when you've got players that you don't want and everybody knows that you don't want them, then you get clubs kind of sniffing around, showing a bit of an interest. Like, think about Nuno Tavares, right? We've heard of a number of clubs that could be interested in him. Sambi Lokonga, we hear that Burnley are interested in getting a deal done for him. I've just read this evening that Real Sociedad are interested in signing Kieran Tierney on loan, which shouldn't happen and probably won't. But the point I'm making is that there are a lot of players in that squad that there are other clubs sniffing around. But what happens is you set your stall out. So you say, Nuno Tavares, I want £10 million for him, which would mean we're in profit from what we paid for him. But if I'm a buying club, I know that you don't want this guy. So the longer the window goes on, the more desperate you become to move him out the door. Therefore, the more likely you are to accept a lower offer. So if there's no great need and there's no urgent need, then I'm going to wait until the back end of the window. So I think you're going to see a sort of group of players leaving around a similar time. That's going to gather momentum, I think, at the back end of the window. I think it works like that all the time. It's always worked like that. And that's why I get really frustrated when people are up in arms going, we're really bad sellers. We can't shift any of the dead wood. When the time comes where it gets desperate, those clubs will make offers and Arsenal then have to make a decision as to whether or not they prefer to get the player out rather than hold out for an extra £2-3 million. A lot of the times as well, it's not about the transfer fee that you're getting in, right? Somebody like Nuno Tavares, just to keep using him as an example, he cost us £8 million. It's more about getting him off the wage bill. That will be what Arsenal are thinking about. It's about managing those weekly costs. The £8 million, you've already paid it. It's gone. It's done. See you later. I'm not saying you don't want to get a fee, but the priority will be balancing the books in terms of your outgoings on a regular basis. So I think towards the end of the window, you'll see that type of player move on. Marquinhos is another one. He could end up going elsewhere as well. He's been linked with a number of clubs on loan. I think some of them we're going to have to loan them with obligations or options to buy because that's all we're going to be able to do for them. But the good thing is that the volume of players that fall into that bracket is much less than it was 2-3 years ago. And that means we're managing the squad much better.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, it wasn't long ago we were paying players off just to leave the club.
Yeah, exactly.
Embarrassing, really. So we've definitely moved on from there. We've got a couple of super chats that I want to go through now, just before we go into our predictions for the season and where we are in terms of Arsenal. I think that's important. So I'm going to ask Dave if he can bring them up now. The first one is from Chaitanya. He's not going to bring it up because he's probably sleeping. So I'll read it. It says, here he is. Big up, lads. Great confidence boost. However, I'm concerned with Arteta's squad and in-game management. It has cost us points previously. Let's win big now. Graham, I wanted to touch on this just quickly because I think it's really important what Chaitanya says. I think this is a huge, huge season for Mikel Arteta for one reason only. This is a big squad now that he has to rotate and keep players happy with. We haven't seen that from Mikel Arteta yet. When he has tried to do it, he hasn't really had the squad depth, has he? He's always had players that he's given a chance to, but they've just been a drop-off and not at that level. And I think for me, this is going to be really key. Pep Guardiola does it magnificently. He only really ever has in his squad 20 players maximum, in my opinion, Pep Guardiola, but they're all of top level quality. When Bernardo Silva isn't about, Foden comes on. We saw that he had the ability to just bring on De Bruyne yesterday. Julian Alvarez is another example of that. There's no real huge drop off. That's the level we want to get to. But when we get to that level, Graham, Mikel Arteta's then got to keep them happy and rotate. And I wondered what your thoughts were on that this season.
Well, we haven't seen him be in that position yet, are we? So he's moving into that sort of situation where he's going to have to rotate and manage players better, because there's no doubt about it. Last season, he overplayed Saka. Absolutely did overplay Saka. And there were certain players he trusts and certain players he doesn't. That's what I got. Was my feeling from last season. I think this season, though, we have recruited well in certain areas, so he will have the opportunity to rotate, and he's going to have to definitely rotate. So be interesting to see how he manages that situation. And Harry mentioned earlier about he's learning already as a manager, and this is something which I think we're going to be finding out about him again this season, how well he's learning when he rotates and who he rotates, how he decides to rotate, of course, because he has got more options now, and players are, there's people like Smith Rowe and Vieira are itching for opportunities. So, I think you made reference there to Manchester City, but Manchester City last year had two players better quality in each position than what we had. For example, they could rotate their wide players last season. And of course, he hasn't got that so much now because Mahrez has gone. I think they're going to go in the market and buy someone before this window's out to replace Mahrez. But they had Foden, Grealish, Alvarez, he could play out wide, Mahrez, Silva, so many options he had out wide, and he was able to keep them happy because basically Manchester City, a big club, those players want to play for Pep. They're playing for the trophies they could win under Pep. He's able to keep them happy because of, I think, the wages they get at Manchester City, and also because they're playing for Manchester City under Pep. And in defence, he had so many options in defence, so many centre halves last season, and of course he's gone out again and bought £100 million centre half. So you have to look at Manchester City and say they've always had the money to have big players in all positions because they can afford to pay the money. We're not quite at Manchester City's level financially, are we? I think they're owned by a country, we're not. But and they've circumnavigated their way around financial fair play. Don't forget that they're still on 115 charges for breaking financial fair play. But in answer to your question, I think Arteta, obviously the way we fell apart last season, he's already admitted he questioned himself at the back end of last season. He made bad decisions, and he was questioning himself, saying, "Am I the right man?" So even he understands that the way the club fell apart at the back end of last season, we had that 8-point lead over Man City and we couldn't get over the line. I think he's aware that he made mistakes last year. And I think he knows now, with the investment he's had, the backing he's got, the squad he's got, I think he's going to have to now sort of like deliver, this season. And I think he knows he's got to start by rotating players and making right decisions. And I think that's Harry's better at understanding that for me. He's sort of like, I think he sort of understands how managers sort of have to, he deals with managers at press conferences. He understands their psyche and all that better than I do. But I think he understands that he's got to be better this season. I think he's got to keep the squad happy. I do feel they're a happy squad, though. And I feel that I do feel at the moment that he will sort of manage that squad better this year. So I can't remember the super chat. Obviously, the guy's right. He did make mistakes last year, but I think, he's got better options this year, so I hope he makes better decisions. I don't know what Harry thinks.
Harry?
Yeah, it's uncharted territory for Mikel Arteta. He's going to have to manage a bigger group of players, and he hasn't really done that. At the beginning, when he first arrived, the squad was over bloated, and one of the first things he tried to do was strip it right back. And at times that's left us short. But we can't bemoan the fact that we were short at points and now complain that the squad's too big and worry about how Mikel's going to manage that. That's part of his development. He's got to learn to do that, and he's got to take it on. One of the things I will say is I think this point is always overblown because the chances of everybody being fit and available throughout the entirety of the season are very low. So a lot of the time, there isn't going to be as many decisions to make as maybe people think. So yeah, like look how rotten our luck has been with injuries over the last few years. Like I'm not sitting here thinking it's a headache. I'm sitting here thinking, right, we're better equipped now to deal with the problems that we're inevitably going to have. But yeah, look, what you hear from Mikel Arteta in a press conference, in an interview, all the rest of it, most of it is very deliberate, and most of it is staged, and most of it is in complete contradiction to what you'll hear in the dressing room if you were a fly on the wall. So I won't buy into all of that too much. And he's got better tools now, so in theory, that should make him, that should give him more chance of succeeding. Is how I look at it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I was just going to come back in, Dan, and say, can I come back in? One of my come back in boosters. Yes, very quickly. I think Dan makes a great. Harry makes a great point there, and I think the thing is, in the past he didn't rotate so much because I think that Harry talks about players that he had to get rid of. They were players he didn't trust. These are now his signings, aren't they? So he should trust every one of them. So he's going to have to sort of like rotate them because he should have trust in them. I still think replacing Bukayo Saka is more difficult because Fabio Vieira doesn't quite offer the qualities on that right hand side that Saka does, and we saw in pre-season when Saka didn't play that we struggled with him not in the team. So that's still going to be a difficult one, how he's going to manage Saka this season, and that's one I think I'll be watching. But just quickly to round up on that point, these are all now his players, so he should be comfortable rotating them, should he? He's going to have to rotate them now because we've got Champions League football and Premier League football, unlike previous seasons where we didn't have Europe. We only had Europa League at the start of the season.
No, you make some good points there. Well, obviously 4 competitions, and I want to see us compete in all of them. I can't lie. The last super chat is from Alex Smith. Says, good to see you. I want to ask you, how far do you think we will go in the Champions League? Well, Alex, we're going to do some predictions, and one of them is part of that. So we're not going to answer that just yet, but we are going to go into some predictions. Lee, season is back, mate. Feels good. I'm happy. Yeah. Looking forward to it at the weekend. I think it's going to be a very good game. But we're going to talk about thoughts of this season, and I've got some questions for you all. So we're going to have a bit of a laugh and go into some of those now. Get involved in the chat if you do want to. We've got some questions, and the first one is who you think, Lee, will be our top scorer this season for the Arsenal.
I'll set it on Sophie's run. I'm going to stick my neck out and go Martinelli.
Last season's top scorer, or one of them?
Yeah, funny enough, I think that he will score a lot. I'd love to say Jesus, but I've got a worrying feeling that Jesus is not going to play as many games as I hope. But so I'm going to stick with Martinelli.
Fair play, Graham. Who are you going for?
Well, last season, 88 goals. They were spread amongst the team. I think we had 3 players up on 15 goals: Martinelli, Odegaard, and Saka. I'm going to go Saka for the simple reason that he takes the pens. I think that it'd be between him and Martinelli. So I'm going Saka.
Interesting. Harry?
I'm going Saka as well. A, he takes the pens, as Graham said, and B, he's the only one. Martinelli most of the time as well, but he's the only one whose position is 100% safe in this side. Because I think Martinelli has got Trossard knocking on his door. And although Martinelli's the number one, Trossard can make a strong case in a way that nobody on the right can for a starting place. So that's why I'm going with Saka.
Interesting. I am going to agree with Harry and Graham. I'm going for Starboy. I'm going Saka. And I just think he's going to get better and better. I just love everything about the lad. I agree with what Harry's saying. He's guaranteed a start. And he just looks so threatening and dangerous. So I'm going to go with Saka. But listen, if it's close as it was last year between our front 4, which I think it would have been if Jesus would have stayed fit, I think he would have got closer to 15. I think he got 10 in the end, didn't he? Missed 3 months. So, yeah, and Trossard, since Trossard signed, I think he's got the most goals and assists in the Arsenal side, which is mad. It's a mad he ain't got one more starts, really, but there we go. So, yeah, good to see us scoring goals. I've got to go with the next one. Player of the season. Let's start with you, Harry.
Oh, Saliba for me.
Oh, interesting one. Like that a lot, actually. Graham.
Do you know what? I'm starting to agree with Harry. I'm getting worried. I thought he was going to say Xhaka there for a minute. I'm going to go Saliba.
Hey. Both of us, man. So you go Saliba as well.
I'm
Okay,
going to Libra as well. Yeah.
interesting. Okay, go on, Lee.
Saliba as well. That's who I've got. What?
Wow. I thought you was going to hit one of the attacking players, but I can understand why you're going to Saliba. That is fair. I'm going to rock the boat. I'm not going to agree with you. I do think Saliba will have an unbelievable season, but I'm going to go for one of our attacking players. I think that if we have a good season, it will be one of the attacking players that gets player of the season, and I am going to go with Starboy yet again. Bukayo, I just think Saka's going to be immense, so I've got to stick with him, man. Top scorer and player of the season. This next one's interesting. I'll start with you, Graham, on this one. Who do you think is going to be our best signing when we look back on this season and say, oh, he was immense for us? Who are you going for, best signing?
I'm not going David Raya. I think I'm going to go with, I think he will eventually be this. I think it'll be Declan Rice.
Declan Rice.
I'm gonna go with Yuri and Timber because of the price. Like in terms of value, what he's going to add for that price, less than £40 million. I think he's going to be key because I worry about Zinchenko's fitness, man. I really, really do.
It wasn't based on value, Harry. It was based on who you thought would be the best signing.
Yeah,
You're
but
doing it
yeah, no, because value is a part of it for me. If I'm assessing what the best signing is, I think that value plays a part here.
Who's going to be give most of the team? I mean, Timber might not play the whole season, might he?
He might not, but I've got this feeling that
It's Harry's choice,
struggle. Yeah, I think Timber's going to help us out a lot. I really, really do. And
no, I think he's a great player. Don't get me wrong.
At that price, he represents such good value that it would be wrong of me not to put his name forward.
It wasn't based on value, though, Harry.
Yeah, but value's a part of assessing whether a good signing is a good signing or not, in my opinion.
I've got to disagree with Harry on something, and before the pod ends.
Absolutely, man. Well, Lee, let's see what you think.
I think like out of all three at the moment, Rice is in third place as far as like that's doing the business. I think like Timber's been the best signing so far in pre-season and Havertz. But I think come the end of the season we'll be all saying Declan Rice. So Declan Rice for me.
Well, this is interesting because I'm actually going to agree with Harry, which is a mad thing to say. Things are changing. The reason I'm going to say this is because
you've grown up, Dan. Welcome.
I've grown up. Hey, this is mad. What am I agreeing with you for? No, I'll tell you why. Our fullbacks are always injured. They're made of glass, all of them. How many of our fullbacks have actually, apart from Ben White, had a full season without injury? Tomiyasu, this is his third season. I think he's played about 30 games for Arsenal in 2 years, something like that. Tierney, we all know that he's had problems. Hasn't actually been injured since March 2022. A lot of people won't really just not been playing him. Obviously, we've got Zinchenko, who I don't know why, but he's not been around for the whole of pre-season. But apparently, he's fit enough to play in the charity game, so he must be fit. So I'm going to go with Timber because I think at the moment, on form, I don't think you could leave him outside. I think he's one of the better players. So that is why I'll go with him. I also agree with what Graham's saying. I know he hadn't had the amazing start for 105 million. I didn't expect him to, if I'm honest, in a few pre-season games. I think he's mustard, Declan Rice. I think he's absolutely quality. And I think you and Lee probably will be right when we look back and think, wow, because he's obviously going to play every single game. But I do think that we'll look back and see how important is Timber. That signing has been so important. And I do think because of the injuries that he will be the one that we look at come the end of the season. Let's do this one then. Most improved player, Lee.
I am going to say Vieira. I feel he's going to be all right. I'm going to go a little bit out of the box, but I'm going to go Vieira.
Think he'll get a chance?
Yeah, I do. I think that he could actually be the one to, and I'll tell you another one that I really like at the moment, always injured now, is Reece Nelson, another one that's injured again, So I think that he's going to get a chance to back up Saka. I think he'll be all right here.
Wow, that's a big call. Graham.
I wanted to go after Harry.
Go on then, Harry. You go, Harry, then. Go on, Harry. You go next then.
I was actually thinking Vieira. Because I really do think there's a talented player there and he just needs a bit more time. I'm not going to do that because Lee went with him, so I'll change it up a little bit. I'm going to go with Emile Smith-Rowe. I think
You didn't want
I
to go,
think-
did you, Graham? You should have gone first, mate.
yeah, I'm going to Emil Smith Rowe. I think he's obviously really struggled with injuries, but even just before, like when he came back last season, he didn't look very good having come back. He didn't look sharp. He didn't look fit. I know it takes time after a long period on the sidelines, but just what I've seen of him in preseason, he looks really sharp and lively. He's bulked up a bit as well, which I think will stand him in good stead if he's going to play in those more central areas. So, yeah, Emil Smith Rowe for me.
Fair play, man. Graham?
I think Harry has just said it. He must be reading off my script because he's just said everything I was going to say.
Don't need a script, Graham.
I thought you journalists used the script, Harry.
I'm not a qualified journalist, man. I'm just a player.
So yeah, Smith Rowe for me. I think he's got a lot to prove this year, and I think he, as Harry said, I think he impressed me pre-season, and I think I think he's going to improve in that. I can see him sort of like improving and possibly giving Mikel a selection headache in that possible left-sided 8 role, as well as the outside when he plays on the wing. He can play, I can see him developing there, and I can see him possibly developing across all facets of the midfield. So I think we'll be looking back and saying at the end of the season that Smith Rowe sort of like, because this is a big season for Smith Rowe, isn't it? Let's face it, boys, a really big season for Smith Rowe, coming back from the injury. And I think that he has got a lot to prove, and I've got this feeling that he's going to do it this season. So I'm going Smith Rowe.
Interesting one. What I like about this question now is answering this. It's actually quite hard because there hasn't been any shockers that I expect to have unbelievable seasons. But I agree with you, boys. I've gone with Emil Smith Rowe because of the injuries last season. He was seen to have a bad season. And I think that he'll prove to everybody what star he is. I love the kid. I think he's great. A couple of seasons ago, he was 12 goals, our top scorer. I think he got a few assists there as well that season. So for me, I do think I've looked at him and I think he looks sharp. A lot of people I've spoken to don't. They think, what's wrong with him? What's happened to him? I think he's been really good. And if we aren't going to go in midfield with what I think we should, then Smith Rowe is going to get a chance there because if there's injuries, he's the one coming in that attacking 8. So I have gone with Emil Smith Rowe as well. Let's go for the breakthrough player. Who do you think is going to break through next at Arsenal? Harry, let's start with you.
Ethan Nwaneri. So glad that we managed to tie him up on a new deal. Got to work on a few games, under 21s, under 18s last season. Under 23 games, work the cup games and all that stuff. And I thought he was really, really good. Obviously got his Premier League debut at 16 years old last season. I'm not saying that he's going to work his way into the side and become a starter, but I think particularly in the Carabao Cup, you could see him get a bit of game time. And I think he's the one that I'm really, really excited about.
Interesting. Lee?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think he only made a little brief appearance in Nuremberg, and it blew me away with what I see, like, confidence and skills and all that. Like, I think the League Cup games, he may get a little bit of a some sort of run out in that, and but it does look a talent. And as Harry said, delighted that he stayed, and you can see he's a top talent, even at that age. And I think it was 15 when Harry that he played at Brentford last season.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, bloody hell, yeah.
To give someone like that 15 a chance to play for the first team, they must have high hopes of him,
Yeah, it's a great shout, Graham.
100% agree with the boys. That's who I had written down. So yeah, 100% agree with you lads on that one.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. Listen, Kozia Dubry is another guy that I really like. I like the look of. I went to the Emirates and watched them against Juventus when it was a poor game, by the way, but it was during the World Cup. And I remember looking at both of them coming on, and I remember both of them were two of the brightest sparks. And I see Kozia Dubry, he's just fearless, just taking on players down a wing. And I think that if we aren't going to be looking at Saka replacement, and if Nelson ain't quite ready because he's another one injured, then he's the one that got the nod at pre-season. And there's obviously a lot of people that like him. So I'm a big fan of both of these lads, and I think we're going to see them in some of the Carabao Cup games featuring at least. So let's see what we can do there as well. The surprise.
I know that Dan. Can I come in, Dan?
On,
just one quick one. I don't know what Harry thinks. I'm just trying to think. We lost that Youth Cup final last season 5-1.
Yeah.
There's some very good young players in that team. I just wonder what Harry thinks of Walters, the centre back. He's been on the bench a few times. So I know the club have got high hopes for him. What do you think of him, Harry?
When I saw him in the last preseason, so not this one, the last one, when he played in the Nuremberg game, didn't he?
Played well.
And he played really, really well. And I expected him to push on that season. Not be a regular in the side, but I expected him to have a bit more of a look in than he did. And then it didn't really happen. So I'm a little bit unsure as to why that was, really. He plays as a right back sometimes as well. Sometimes as a centre back, sometimes as a right back. And now when you look at the fact that Mikel quite likes to play players of a central defensive profile in the fullback positions, maybe that opens the door to him getting a nod at some point this season. Again, maybe in the Carabao Cup, whatever. But I'm not sure. I thought he was really progressing at that point, and then last season has caused me maybe to think maybe he's not quite there yet. So I got to be honest, I'm not really sure. Not really sure.
Fair play. Listen, this last one is a tricky one because it's sort of similar to most improved player, but it's a surprise star, one that you think, oh, I did not see that. Doesn't have to be one that's come through the youth. It doesn't have to be any player that you want that you thought, wow, I did not see that season coming from him. I knew he was good, it weren't that good, or I didn't know he was this good, whatever it be. Let's start with Graham. Who you gone for this one, bro?
Well, I struggled in this category, to be honest. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go slightly outside the box here. Well, not outside the box. We'll do something that I don't think anyone's going to agree with. So, we've talked about sort of Mikel's ability to sort of transform players. So I'm going to go a surprise star this season. I'm just going to go Havertz. I think he's going to work with him and turn him into the player that Chelsea couldn't. So, and I think I've got every confidence that he'll develop him in that left-sided 8 role if need be, but also he's going to sort of like do better down the middle. So I'm going to say, because when I say surprise star, it's because I think the fan base are very negative on this Havertz signing. A lot of people are not expecting him to hit the height. So I'm going to stick my neck out and say he will be a surprise star and have a good season. So that's why I'm saying that.
Lovely optimism, man. Harry.
Yeah, I agree with Graham on that. I think that the guy's getting such a rough ride from some of our fans, and I cannot for the life of me understand why. We've seen many players over the years go to a club, find the environment difficult, struggle to have an impact, move somewhere else, and their careers have come to life. And we constantly hear about how good Mikel is at coaching on an individual level. How many players over the last few years, Man City players mainly, have come out and said that he really helped them and really took their game to a new level. So I've got confidence that he wouldn't sanction a deal of worth 65 odd million pounds for a player that he wasn't absolutely sure he could get more out of than what we'd seen during his time at Chelsea. So for me, it's going to be Kai Havertz. I think he's going to get double figures in terms of goals in the league alone. I think he'll get at least 10 league goals, whether that's him playing as a centre forward, whether that's him covering from one of the flanks at times, whether that's him playing as the left 8. If you think Granit Xhaka got forward and got 7 league goals because of the positions that Arteta's system puts him in inside the opposition box, Kai Havertz has got much more of a striking instinct than Xhaka did. And I think that if Xhaka got that return, if the system works right, there's no reason that Havertz can't do even more. So Havertz is mine as well.
Interesting. Lee?
Yeah, I've gone Havertz as well. For that, the other one I'm struggling with this one, as Graham said. I would to just go against the boys a little bit. Maybe go Trossard. I think that maybe he's going to surprise people and maybe start getting more starts than what we think and realise how good he. I think, by the way, he's been the best in pre-season, and I thought coming on yesterday again really was up there. So I think when you look at him, I think maybe at the end of the season. What I'm hoping is we go, wow, did we actually spend that? That was all we spent on him. That would be a nice sort of little thing to say. We only spent like such amount of money on him. So for me, I'm going to go Havertz, but I'm going to put Trossard in there as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this one. It was a hard one for me, but I looked at the new signings and I thought of Timber. And then when I've now seen him, I'm like, that ain't really going to be a surprise star because he looks like a star in the first few games. I haven't seen enough of Havertz or Rice yet to say they're going to be surprise stars, let alone stars. I think they have the ability to be. Certainly Declan Rice, I believe, will be a star. So I've gone with between two players that are already currently here. One of them's Gabriel Jesus, and this might be a bit of a strange one for me, but a lot of people have written him off as being top scorer. A lot of people are saying that he's just not the guy that's going to finish his dinner in front of goal. And although I haven't put him as the top scorer, I do think if he stays fit, I do expect him to get more goals than last season. And I think that what he brings to the side is somewhat overrated and goes kind of unsung. I thought against Barcelona was a typical performance like that. I thought he was outstanding against Barcelona, and no one really mentioned him because obviously he didn't get on the score sheet. But the player that I have gone for is Trossard, and with Lee. I've been so impressed with him since he's come to Arsenal, but particularly in pre-season. I love the fact that he plays in a number of positions, and every time he's coming on at the moment, he's either scoring, assisting, or creating. And I've been so impressed with him, man. So I'm going to go for him because I do believe, as much as I love our front four, I think he might be able to force his way in there with his performances, mate. And I think it would be deserved. The only thing I will say is Mikel Arteta going to allow him to have that chance? Because I sometimes feel like he's been treated a little bit unfairly, Trossard, in terms of the performance he's put in and not really getting given the start. We mentioned Havertz getting ahead of him. I've seen Eddie get ahead of him. I've seen Martinelli keep his place, and I love Martinelli, don't get me wrong. Saka, when needed a rest, he doesn't want Trossard out there as much on the right-hand side, and he can't seem to get in the attacking 8 or in the number 10 in Ødegaard's position. So I wonder if that's really been fair. He got player of the month in March. I didn't really see him in April or May come on a few times, but he didn't really get a first team performance, and I thought that was a little bit harsh. So I'm expecting to see good things from Trossard still, and that's who I've gone for in terms of my surprise star. So that'll be interesting. Last few people. Premier League position. Where are Arsenal going to finish this season, Harry?
Second. I'd love to say that we're going to win it, but I can't say that right now. I'd love that to be the case, but Manchester City are an absolute machine. I still think they'll do more business between now and the end of the window as well. They've let a few players go. I think Pep will look to address a couple of those positions. I know he's addressed the centre-back situation. Some are saying that Cole Palmer is going to be the guy that replaces Riyad Mahrez. I'm not sure about that. I think they will do at least 1 or 2 more bits of business. They've got the best manager in the world at the moment. They've got a striker that is going to score 30-plus league goals. They've got all the components. So it's up to us to knock them off their perch. But if I was betting my mortgage on it, for example, my house on it, then I would still predict City. So I'll put Arsenal second.
Yeah, interesting. Listen, I think if we go and get David Raya, we go and get Caicedo, and we go and get Tony, I honestly believe we'll win the league. If we don't do that, I think we will fall short and come second again. So I'm going to go second because I don't believe those 3 will be coming in. So Lee, what are you saying?
Yeah, I think that, listen, we're playing against the best team in the world. They're going to be favourites for the league. They're going to be favourites for the Champions League. They're going to be favourites for the FA Cup, and they're going to be favourites for the Carabao Cup, and they were favourites for the Community Shield. There you go. So there's always a hope, There's always a chance. But I will be disappointed if Arsenal don't come second. If there's another team above us, and if we come second, and say Manchester City come third, or by whatever reason we like Liverpool win it, I'll be even more peeved off because I think that there's a massive gap. Well, there was last season between us and Man City and the rest, and I feel that gap shouldn't be closed that much. I think Arsenal were fantastic last season for the majority of it. So and head and shoulders above everybody else apart from Manchester City, and at some points of the season as good if not better than City. So I don't expect us to drop. I expect us to push City all the way again. But I just think what Harry just said there, and I do think it is pivotal. It is Haaland. And they didn't do much yesterday, but it's a 30 goal score. Unless he gets injured, then that may be the chance that Arsenal need. But he does seem like a bit of a robot and a machine as well, doesn't he? So, yeah, second for me.
Fair play, Graham.
My heart says first, but my head says second. You go into every season as a fan super optimistic that you're going to win it. I think we got the team that could win it, but I still think we're behind Manchester City. So, I agree with everything that Lee and Harry have said. So I'm going second, mate.
Fair play to you, man. What a negative podcast, we all are. What's going on? I'm joking. Listen, let's talk quickly because obviously the super chat coming around the Champions League, and I wanted to touch on that as well. How far can we go, boys, in the Champions League? Lee, let's start with you.
All the way. All the way. I think there's a chance. You've got to be very, very fortunate with the draw and all that. It's a cup competition. Let's not get away from that fact. It's a cup competition. You know, Inter Milan, were they the best team in Europe last season? No, but they got their way through it. Like, I think we're going to have to be very, very fortunate to go through the rounds at Wembley. If it is at Wembley, you know, we've got a fantastic record at Wembley, so it would be wouldn't it be great? I think that we're doing well in it, and I think there's always a chance because I'm telling you this now, it's a cup competition. That's how I feel about it, like, you know, and some bloody good teams in it. But I'll tell you what, when the last time we was in it, the Barcelona are not the Barcelona that I've seen. The Real Madrid are not the Real Madrid that I've seen. Bayern Munich ain't the same Bayern Munich neither. So if someone's going to win it, it'll be from England.
Very interesting. Graham?
Well, I think that Manchester City are the current champions of Europe, and we've proved on Sunday we can live with them and compete with them. So on that, you know, I'm going to be super optimistic. As Lee says, it's a cup competition. Anything can happen. Depends on the draws. Not always the best team in Europe wins the Champions League. We were the best team in Europe in 2003-04. We didn't win it. Chelsea have won it when they weren't the best team in Europe, and not always the best team in Europe wins the Champions League. I think the best team in Europe won it last year. And as I say, we are not far short of where they are. You know, they are obviously ahead of us. So there's no reason why we can't go deep into the competition. It depends on the draws, depends on injuries, luck, as we've all said. I think we're capable of going deep into the competition. I'd like to see us get to the semis, maybe. So I'm going to predict we're going to win it. No, just a joke there. I think that we'll go. I think we go deep. I think with semi-finals.
Okay, interesting. Harry?
Yeah, look, it's a cup competition, as the guys have said. There's no reason to believe that we can't go all the way. I think Lee's spot on. It's the English teams that I'm worried about. I don't fear Real Madrid. I don't fear Bayern. I don't fear Barcelona anymore. I don't fear the Italian clubs. I think we're better than most of those teams. It's just the occasion can sometimes get on top of you when you face someone like Real Madrid who has that kind of history and heritage and all the rest of it. But footballing terms, we're as good as anybody. So I'm going to predict semi-finals. I think getting to the quarterfinals is the bare minimum. Anything less than that would be really, really disappointing. But I think Arsenal could go as far as the semis. And it's obviously draw dependent as well. But yeah, semi-finals is what I'm hoping for.
Interesting, man. I ain't sleeping on Real Madrid. No way. I never will in Europe. I tell you what I'll say to this one, boys. If we go out to Europe's elite, I can accept it. What I can't do is what we've done the last 2-3 years. I can't go out to Villarreal, Olympiacos, Sporting Lisbon. We're better than that. Yeah, we should be. The money we've spent. We should not be going out to teams like that. We should not be dropping down to the Europa League. We should not be coming out of the last 16 against teams like Porto or like Harry mentioned, some of the Italian clubs. We should be going as far as we can into the deep stage of the competition. And if we do fall short to Real Madrid or Man City in the semi-finals, I'll say fair play. And as long as we give it a crack, we don't get embarrassed. I'll say, look, they can beat anybody on their day. But I'm not having us going out to Club Brugge in the last 16 or coming out the group stages to Maccabi Haifa. That just ain't happening to me. Right? That's just not acceptable to go all this way to get finally into it and lose out on it. So we've got to go all the way. And the football we play on our day should allow us to do that in the semis. So I want to finish on the domestic cups just quickly before we close.
Yeah, Dan. Dan, can I just come in one point here?
You've got to
one thing we've overlooked is that we've never been in this position for a long time. So, you know, competing on two fronts. If we're doing well in the league, can we be sort of like expected to sort of go deep into the Champions League? Because we've, you know, Manchester City have got a phenomenal squad. They had it last year to go as deep as they did and win it, and to be competing on all fronts. This group of players have never been in that position before. I think we have to sort of like remember that, you know, as much as we know this is a strong group of players, there's depth in the squad now. we've never competed on two fronts. We couldn't compete on two fronts last year. I know we didn't have the depth that we had, but we have to factor that in. To think all of a sudden now, because we've had one or two good additions, that we're going to go, compete for the league again and then go deep in the Champions League. Are we getting far ahead of ourselves? I don't know what you boys think about that. Can we do that on two fronts?
I don't think we should. And this might sound brutal, Graham, but I don't think we can spend this much money and then go, oh, it's only our first season back in the Champions League. That's why we went out. We're only going for this again. Listen, we've waited 20 years now, 30 years for European trophy, 20 years for a league. When is it acceptable for us to accept to be going on for all four fronts? And that's not me having a pop at you, Graham. That's just a genuine question. Like, when is it acceptable for us to go, I think we can win the league and the Champions League now? And I think we get a lot of people now in this season. We'll go out in the last 16, let's say. Well, it was only our first year back in the Champions League. Well, hang on, we haven't been in it for 7 years. Like, what? We moved here to winning it.
The only thing is, Dan, we saw last season, great group of players should have won the Premier League. But the pressure got to that young group towards the end of the season, didn't it? That's why we didn't get over the line and win the Premier League. I don't know what Harry thinks. If we're the pressure now of being in two competitions, imagine if we are competing with Man City for the title, then we are sort of like going deep in the Champions League. This is going to be a first for this group of players, whatever you say. So I don't know what Harry thinks. Do you agree with me on that, Harry, or do you think what Dan says?
I do. I do agree, because I get what Dan's saying, that, you can't have the excuse forever. And I get that. But we haven't even achieved one of them yet. We haven't even been able to do one of them yet. So to expect us to be able to be super competitive on both fronts. And that's another big reason why I don't put Arsenal as Premier League champions next season, because I think we've got a big challenge trying to balance. Remember, look, the Europa League.
You're not expecting us to win anything, Harry?
I expect us to challenge for the Premier League. I don't know if we're going to win it or not. And I expect us to give it a good crack in the Champions League. But to sit here and say that there's no excuse if we fall away on one of them, I think is a little bit, is getting ahead of ourselves, because we haven't done it yet. Like, when you're in the Europa League, okay, it's a different competition. Everybody moans about the Sunday, Thursday thing and all that. But ultimately, you can rotate 75% of your team in the Europa League up until the round of 16 and get away with it. You essentially can play two different teams. Can't do that in the Champions League. You can't do it. You're going to have to play your best possible team on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and then again at the weekend, and then on a Tuesday and a Wednesday again, and then again at the weekend. Now we're in a European competition that we have to take seriously from the very, very beginning. And that's going to be demanding. The other thing I was going to say, I know we're going to talk about the domestic cups. They go by the wayside even more for me this season than they did in the last two. And I know a lot of Arsenal fans would disagree with that, because I would rather go one round further in the Champions League than win the Carabao Cup, genuinely. So for me, I want to see Arsenal prioritize the league and the Champions League. Anything else is a bonus in the cup competitions. But Graham's right to point out that we're kind of getting a bit carried away if we're going from falling away at the end of the league season when we didn't really have a serious European competition. We went out, against Sporting before it got really, really serious in the Europa League. But we can't just expect Arsenal now to be 100% on both fronts. I think it's going to be one or the other if we're going to win any of them.
All right, before I bring Lee in, when do you think we can expect that?
Well, when you get over the line on one of them, and then you're proven winners, then you can start talking about doubles, and you can start talking about being super competitive on multiple fronts. I don't think you can get to that point when you haven't achieved anything yet, and Arsenal haven't achieved anything yet.
Interesting. So would you rather then, if we're sorry man, it's like me and Harry, if you're in a chance of an FA Cup final, you'd rather come out of that in the semis and then get through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League?
No, that's not exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is priorities change over the course of a season. You could get to February, think top four is pretty much wrapped up, and decide that you're going to prioritize a cup competition now. You accept that you're not going to win the league. If you're in the league mix like we were last season, and we didn't have the squad to compete on multiple fronts, we took a bit of a gamble, didn't we? And we didn't play our best team against Sporting in that game, and we got caught cold and we got done and dumped out of the competition. So priorities will take precedent at certain points in the season. You can't prioritize 100% from now, But if you're setting out your stall for the campaign, you look at Premier League and you look at Champions League first and foremost. Of course, if you're in an FA Cup final, you want to win it. Of course you do.
Yeah, man. Lee, trophy this season, man. For me, it's got to be. It's been too long, in my opinion. And people will say 2020, but in the last decade, that's a long time for us not to win a trophy. 4 years this will be. So, what's your thoughts, bro?
Like, go for all of them, like, you know, but in a different way. Like, you know, when we come to the League Cup, you know, go in there with a squad to start off with, see what happens, try and get to a bit like what most teams do. Man City do it, and then, like, you know, maybe change for the final. FA Cup the same. I think, you know, when you go into the FA Cup, we've just been coming back from the winter break and it, like, you know, use it for the first couple of rounds, see where it takes you. I would be disappointed if we went out to, say, a team lower than us in the lower league or something like that. If we was, again, to draw a Man City away and lose there, or Manchester United away, I wouldn't be there. Again, it depends on the draw. But if we get home draws and all that, like, you know, keep going and see how it goes, you know. But use the squad, you know, see, like, for instance, you know, like the likes of Tierney, the likes of Kivior, you know, getting games in those sort of competitions, seeing where we are. So when it comes to the latter part of the Champions League and the title, that if anything of our main player gets injured, they're all, you know, battle ready for it, like, you know. So I'm not with on this page of, oh, we've got to win a trophy, because I think it's very, very hard to win a trophy. What I expect Arsenal to do next season is compete on all four fronts and push for anything, you know. I'm not in this camp of saying, oh yeah, we're going to win the league, or we're going to push for the Champions League. I want to see us do well in them. It's no good getting into the Champions League, guys, and not competing. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? Like, I want us to be competing and pushing. And the same for the FA Cup and League Cup. You know what I mean? It's no good. What's the point of entering them? You know, but I think, again, with the League Cup and FA Cup, we've got to have a little bit of luck. Didn't have it last season away at bloody Man City in the second game, you know. So, you know, you need a little bit of luck in that. I look at Man United last season, won the Cups. Who did they really play? Didn't play anybody real, you know. I think in the Carabao Cup, I think they got Nottingham Forest, who were bottom of the league. It was in the semi-finals.
They had every game at home lead, didn't they?
Yeah,
in the lead up to the final.
See, I think it just depends a little bit of luck on draws and everything for me. But hopefully, we get one of those big prizes. That's what I'm hoping for, and I think we've got the squad to do it. I don't know. I'm a little bit with Harry on this. I don't know if we've quite got the know-how to do it yet, but this is all building up to when we will have. There is going to be a time when it's not acceptable, though, Dan. I agree with that. Like, when the excuses have got to stop. I'm not quite sure we're at that stage yet, but I expect us to be going for all four trophies. Listen, if we went for the League Cup and say the FA Cup, and then we lose a league because we're tired towards the end of the season, you know, I'll be a little bit disappointed. So I think that we've got to manage it very well. This is where it comes down to Arteta. He's got to manage every single game really well, like, you know, and it's going to be tough. But, you know, it's not easy to win a trophy, so I don't think we should be throwing them away.
The other thing is as well, though, like, it can't be as simplistic as win a trophy or it's rubbish and everybody needs to be held accountable. We got 84 points in the league last season. If we could get 92 points and up against this Man City side, we could still not win the league.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But we would have still been better than we were last season.
I understand that there's context for sure, but for me, I think we need to be looking at. So let's. What I don't get, and we'll close on this because we are overrunning, but we will close on this. Manchester City are favourites to win every competition. I get that. I understand that. How many times has the quadruple been won? None that I can think of. So I think we will win a trophy this year. I do. I don't know if you guys disagree. I think we'll probably win one of the domestic cups. Let's go FA Cup. Let's just say that. Because for me, I think that is what could save our season if it goes wrong like people are expecting. Man City do it in the Champions League again. They beat us in the Premier League like we've all predicted. The domestic cup might be the only thing that could save our season, because for me, it's about winning trophies. It ain't about try and get that last 16. We'll throw that team out against Brighton in the FA Cup quarters, and we'll just go out of that and we'll make sure we beat Porto in the last 16. I want to go to both. I want to be going for these trophies, and I think it is acceptable for us now to expect to go on all four fronts, because when you've spent that much money and had 5 years now of a process, surely that is enough for me to now say I think we should be winning a trophy. Now, I'm not saying tear it all up and start again if we don't win a trophy, but I think there's obviously context for that. But I think at the start of the season, I believe it should be acceptable for us to expect to win some silverware. But that's just me.
I think we should be confident we can win a trophy. I don't know that we should expect it. That's the bit where I disagree.
Oh yeah, of course. The aim is always to win. Of course.
The aim is to win, of course. The other thing as well, like that we have to factor in here, is that as fans, our priority is to go to Wembley and see our team lift the trophy. Right? That's what we want. That's what we dream of. We live for it. To a club, it don't always work like that. And for example, Carabao Cup. Winning the Carabao Cup is great for us as fans, but as a football club, you'd rather be in the Champions League. You'd rather qualify for the Champions League. You'd rather go one round further in the Champions League because the financial reward that comes from that is greater. That's where football's broken a little bit, in that the trophies, some of them have been devalued.
Top four.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and fine. But the club wouldn't see it like that. Stan Kroenke wouldn't be counting his millions off of a Carabao Cup win, but he would be if Arsenal secured Champions League football again. And at times, you got to remember that these managers, the players, they're working for a football club, and the football club is owned by its owners. And the priorities that we have as fans are not always 100% aligned with what a football clubs are. And it's just worth bearing that in mind, I think.
And just one other point, Dan, is that this squad is a very young squad. He's building for the future. The squad is growing. And I think that over the next 2 or 3 years, with this squad getting better, I think we should expect trophies. But I think the thing is we need to be competing on all fronts first. We need to win that first trophy. Then we go to the next stage. I think that's the way I look at it. And I just hope that we compete all the way this season in the league and the Champions League. It depends how the season pans out with the domestic cups, whether we can have a run in that. But I think we have to factor in that Manchester City are in this league. If they weren't in this league, it would be easier, wouldn't it? And I think Man City know that we're the strongest rival for them this season. I think they gave us great respect on Sunday, and we saw it in the game. 2 top quality sides. It was tactically a great battle between 2 great managers. I think we are improving. We're getting there. Now, it's a fair point you make. We spent a lot of money. Should we win a trophy? And of course, we want to win a trophy. But the most important thing to see our club continue to grow. These young players, I'm sure, will deliver if they all stay together. And he's managed to tie them down. He's made some great signings. But he's also tied great young players down. And I like to think that in the next couple of years, we will see one of those big prizes, that these group of players lift one of those big prizes. But I think I'm not saying, I'm not trying to be pessimistic as a fan. I'm just trying to be realistic. And I think what Harry says is he's made valid points there. So that's the point I'd make on it.
Interesting. Listen, boys, we're going to leave it there. It's been an absolute blast for a first one. I can't lie to you. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And I want to say massive thank you to everybody in the chat. We have missed a super chat, so I haven't forgotten it. This is from Goran Taylor, who agrees and says, ironic how we finally beat City without our 2 Man City signings. I think Zinchenko will have difficulty getting back into the 11. Timber looks class. Absolutely agree. He has been superb in pre-season and was great yesterday. Big up, Graham, man. Thank you so much for coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And, I just sort of miss it, really. I have missed it over the last couple of years. I mean, you guys are friends.
Absolutely, man. It's all family here, mate, and it's all love. Harry, great to have you on, man. It feels weird debating with you again. Thank you for coming on, mate.
No, thank you for having me, guys. It's great to be back talking Arsenal with you guys after a weekend. So, looking forward to the next one.
Love, man. Lee, always a pleasure, man. I'm glad we've done
great insight there. Love the views of Harry and Graham there. Fantastic, and some sensible debate. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, man, and no one's arguing. It's not like
No.
on Twitter where you start getting hate and all this. It's quite nice. We'll get these guys on again. Listen, make sure you do us all a favor, man. We're going to be here every Monday at 9 p.m. So make sure that you subscribe. Make sure you get us to the next target, which is, of course, 40K. Make sure you come and follow myself, Harry, and Graham as well on all our socials. And hit the like and subscribe as you leave. We will see you next time. Have a great rest of your week. We'll be back very soon, and we'll see you next time. Take care and up the Arsenal. Latest, people.